I'm sitting in my dressing room on Broadway, 45th Street at the Plymouth Theatre, and we are 2 days away from opening night. The publicity for this show has been unbelievable. It's going to be very interesting to read what the critics say about the show. I had no idea how much drama would be involved in being on Broadway.
She said, "Who's that?" And she said, "Linda." I said, "Oh, you're Linda." She went,
and then she said to George, she was like, "You're a PA." He just came up to me and was like, "Who are you, Linda? Who?"
"Linda who?"
Yeah, but you're
Which one? Which one?
Paul.
He said Linda who?
Yeah, you're such a cunt. I mean, I think we got a hint of it in London, you know, the sort of theatre snobbery. Who are these upstarts coming in, you know, thinking they could do a theatrical show? But Broadway is a whole different story because people seem to hang on every word of critics.
Here's the outrageous boy, George!
You just have to kind of get on with what you're doing and focus on performing and not worry about all that stuff. But it does affect morale, you know, it affects the actors more than it does me because I tend to get more calm during a drama. You're fired anyway, I just want you to know you're fired! Which is kind of, you know, a weird thing about me, but when everyone else is being really negative, I tend to kind of think, well, what's the point of joining in? You might as well just enjoy yourself. So it'd be interesting to find out what they do say. I can't wait. I can think of the headlines, to boring, to bollocks. In a funny sort of way, despite all the dramas, we have actually ended up with a show that I think is very good. My musical project, The Twin, is a collision between myself and Lee Bowery, also my own alter egos, being a Gemini. There's always two sides of me. One that wants to be loved, the other side that wants to give everyone the finger. And I think that I was in a bit of a kind of musical no man's land, really, because I had a record deal, but nobody really knew what to do with me. The record company were always hoping I would sort of write another Karma Chameleon. They didn't realise that those things are things that just happen. You don't sit down and write those type of songs. Well, I don't. I'm not that type of writer. And, you know, my mind works very fast, so I end up sort of constantly changing what I'm doing musically. I think for me, The Twin is probably the most concise musical project that I've ever done. It's electro-based, but there are lots of other elements going in there, like ragga and, you know, R&B, bits of rock, bits of goth. But I think in terms of subject matter and in terms of kind of style, you know, it glues together better than anything I've done before. The last time I really did that was with the Martha Mantress, Jesus Loves You, which was my kind of venture into kind of more of a dance feel. And The Twin really grew out of playing Lee in Taboo. I think before doing that, I'd kind of lost interest in dressing up, and I don't know, I became a bit of a sort of inhibitionist, if you like. It's not a real word, but it is now. And just playing Lee and performing without the band and without that safety of a microphone, you know, actually acting, I think in some ways has affected the way that I perform. The last gig that I did at Ronnie Scott's, I think it's the most I've ever talked in my entire career, which is unusual because I'm a very talkative person. Anyone who knows me will tell you that. But I tend to sort of clam up when I'm performing songs. And having done, you know, a bit of theatre work, it's really made me much more kind of confident about talking to audiences, and the two things kind of help each other. The other thing I think for me is that in the UK in particular, I mean, I don't get played on the radio. Radio 1 have unofficially banned me for a number of years, partly because I'm one of the few artists who will speak out against them and the control they have over the industry.
From the Institute of Fame, Radio 1, a million listeners can't be wrong. Switching off, not switching on.
There's a lot of people who do really dislike Radio 1 but wouldn't dare say it because to do so is career suicide. You could argue that I'm doing that because I can afford to, because I make a living. You know, I've established myself, I make money, so therefore I'm in a comfortable position to be able to attack them. But that's not why I do it. I think as I've got older, the thing that I enjoy more is the actual writing and recording and creating music. The whole palaver of kind of trying to sell it to the public, all the channels you have to go through, radio, press, you know. These days, you know if a record's going to be a hit a week before it comes out. There's no life. If you go back to the early 80s, a record could be in the charts for months. I mean, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me went in at number 60 or 90 and slowly crept up to the number 1 spot. That doesn't happen anymore. You know, careers are decided and ended at an alarming rate these days. And it reached a point for me where I was going through those sort of same old channels every time I released a record, and coming up against a brick wall. Every time I put a record out, Radio 1 would come up with a reason not to play me. Either I was too old, or the record wasn't right, or they had decided it wasn't a Boy George record. And I just knew as an intelligent person that I had to take myself out of that medium and do something that, number one, was, you know, in a way without compromise. So the Twin was born out of that kind of frustration, you know, the kind of bravery of Lee, the fact that Lee deliberately marginalised himself as a performer. Although I think Lee probably thought of himself as a kind of fantastic pop star, and certainly in some respects he was a forerunner for Marilyn Manson, you know, but maybe even too much for the people that like Marilyn Manson. It's really just a bravery thing. I think you just get to the point where you realise, well, that's not working. There's no point kind of trying to walk backwards up a hill in strapless mules. You know, you just end up frustrating yourself constantly. So I took myself out of that and I started working with people that have a similar attitude to me, you know, people that aren't just in it for the money, people that are creative, because I have come to the point now where I realise that the only thing we have of any worth are our ideas. Ideas are what matter. So it's really about what we impart and what we share with other people, what we express. And I do believe that the reason I started singing was because I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be able to express myself, and there are many ways to do that. And there's so many different avenues you can go through now, you know, the internet, you know, independent, you know, ways of selling records. And for me, it's almost like going back to square one. You know, it's almost like, you know, the first 4 Twin singles are limited edition, 7 inches. It's fantastic to be able to hold, you know, a 7 inch is like almost being 16 again, you know. Look, small record, you know, not a CD. And the idea with the Twin is kind of tie it in with performance, unrestricted performance, working, you know, at my own pace, making my own rules is really the only way forward. History has kind of painted me as this kind of, you know, sort of, you know, user-friendly homosexual, and maybe that's true to a certain extent because I do get on with everybody, you know, but that doesn't mean I share their point of view on many subjects. But I think essentially it's about freedom. It's about being able to say, I want to do things my way, and, you know, if they fail, I've only got myself to blame, and I do other work to enable myself to be able to afford to make my own videos, to make my own records, to decide what kind of artwork I have. And it's a nice feeling, because that's what I thought would happen, you see, when I was 16 and naive, going to the local record shop, you know, rushing up there to see the new Bowie sleeve or whatever on the T-Rex album, and I just thought that the music industry was this great bastion of creativity and freedom, but it's a business. Doing something like the Twin allows me to kind of creep in through the cracks, you know, coming through the side door. It's not a kind of in-your-face, big promotion, loads of money type project. It's like what I want to do, and again, it gives me a chance to work with people that think the way that I do, have the same kind of ethics, and if it's successful, great, you know, if it creates some kind of, you know, interest, brilliant, but that's really what it's about. It's a chance to wear as much makeup as possible while I still can, and to sleep with as many boys as I can while I still can.